Hello everybody, it is Jason from Con+3 and I'm here with the one and only from the Arcane Library, Kelsey, because it is literally just her. She's done everything herself, which is amazing. How are you doing today, Kelsey?
I'm doing really well, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Okay, so let's talk a bit about how your business started, because you've been around now for about 3 years, maybe a little bit more. Um, and recently you have really exploded and kind of you're on drive-through as a big presence. You're big in the DMs Guild now, of course. But how was the Arcane Library originally conceived?
Yeah, I've always liked writing. I studied writing in college, and that's what my degree is in.
Okay.
I did what everyone does, which is do something not in my field immediately after I
Hmm.
got out of school. So I was working in big tech for a long time, and um, I had always been playing D&D, and I was always writing adventures, and it kind of dawned on me slowly over time that I really just prefer doing D&D and writing and that kind of thing compared to what my current career trajectory was.
Hmm.
Um, so that's when I really started to take writing seriously and kind of think, maybe there's something to this. Like maybe I could turn this into an actual job. And then 3 years later, I managed to do it with it took a lot of work, but that's kind of what brought me here.
Yeah, and it is really obvious that you've put a lot of hard work into your products and it's really paid off. Um, but yeah, your main sort of products, as it were, are your one shots, your 5e scenarios. There's a lot of different settings and adventures and things, but am I right that it's not bound to any kind of canon setting? So it's not like Sword Coast based or anything. So anybody could just pick it up and run it in whatever world, like D&D world, they want.
Yeah, that was the goal because I figured that I myself love so many different D&D settings that I was
Mm,
like, well, I couldn't just confine myself to writing in one anyway. So I tried to make it very like world agnostic so that it would be easy to
awesome.
drop things in and just even with small tweaks.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Cool. So let's have a little talk about your most recent product, Corruption of Skyhorn Lighthouse. I know you've been very, very busy with this, and I know it's a sequel as well to The Secrets of Skyhorn Lighthouse, which came out about 3 years before. This took a long time for you to write this, but obvious as to why. It's a big one shot. Did you have any specific goals in mind for this one? Like, kind of on the back of the old one, in that you wanted to maybe improve something or do something a bit different?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Because yeah, the Secrets of Skyhorn Lighthouse, which was the precursor, was the first adventure that I ever released, actually.
Mm,
Um, so I kind of wanted to do just everything a little bit better, even the layout and the art placement and um, the story. I also wanted to be related, but to have an emphasis on sort of different things compared to the prior adventure, which was it was very like combat heavy. And so
mm,
I wanted this one to feature maybe a little bit more of an interesting cast of NPCs to try to play that up a little bit and give
yeah.
a different angle on the whole Skyhorn adventure theme.
Mm. And for those who've not played either, I believe that you can still play this as standalone anyway, can't you? Even though it's a sequel, technically.
Yeah, you could. And I think I always record a video to go along with an adventure
Yeah.
that I publish. It's a walkthrough, and I think I give a little bit more advice in the video than I do in the adventure, but it's just a matter of substituting out one NPC, and then I think you could actually run the whole thing without needing to have played the prior adventure.
Sure. And what made you decide to go for kind of this ocean themed, lots of sort of coral stuff and underwater based? Like, what was your inspiration for that?
Yeah, gosh. I don't quite know where that inspiration came from. I knew I wanted to do you know, I did some underwater stuff in the prior adventure because it's for fifth level players, so it's still kind of scary to have to go underwater. And then
Yeah.
this most recent one now is eighth level, and so water breathing and going underwater is a little bit more, I guess, routine. Um, so I wanted to go like completely underwater, have it be the entire surrounding, and I figured that you know, a coral type environment I thought would be kind of exciting because you can then have big
Mm,
cave systems and stuff and have it be
yeah.
very full of like, anemones and glowing things. And I don't know.
No, it sounds
That's pretty much
fantastic.
it.
Yeah, yeah. And you've got stonking reviews for your new one as well, so congrats for that.
Thank you.
So let's have a little talk now about what you're going to be giving away, which again we're very appreciative of that. But from the ocean depths to the fires of Isk, let's move to completely the polar opposite. A 20th level one shot, that is quite rare. And from what I've read from like reviews and so on, it is, whilst it is 20th level, so people are very, characters are very buffed up by that point, it is still quite a terrifying and challenging scenario. So where did Talismere and the whole mysterious volcano idea come from?
Oh, so that man, I really wanted to write something that was set in the elemental plane of fire.
Okay.
Um just because I think that I love the elemental planes. I think I end up making a link to them in about half the adventures I write, perhaps
Hmm.
like unintentionally even, but um I really wanted to write about a super volcano because I had been watching a documentary about volcanoes and it really stuck in my mind at the time. Um, and I thought, well, where would the most epic volcano in the multiverse be? And that has to be on the elemental plane of fire. That's where the original sort of idea of this super explosion that was, shaking the multiverse came from.
Mm.
And that's the instigating event is that there's such a bad volcanic explosion that it actually is coming over onto the material plane itself, and the players have to do something to stop that whole catastrophe.
Mm. Wow. I mean, I've personally never run a 20th level game before. Certainly not something so epic sounding as this. I mean, do you have any hints for DMs who may feel a bit kind of worried that it's, that the pressure is on you almost to create this huge epic game for your characters?
Yes, that's such a I honestly am intimidated as well by running super high level adventures, and I get asked occasionally about, what's different about that versus a lower level tier. And I honestly, after a lot of play testing and a lot of playing at higher level adventures to get the feel for how these work, I actually think that the difference is subtle. Like you're still trying to challenge the players and scare them through damage and making them feel like they have to respond to these threats. So the
Mm.
threats are more dangerous. Um, but I think a lot of the intimidation factor comes from DMs worrying that the players are going to do something totally unexpected, like they
Mm.
have some
Mm.
secret, ace in the hole spell that just derails half the adventure. And I think you always have to allow for that in high level play. I think that letting players overcome these huge challenges by being clever and having just the right spell is actually the fun of it.
Mhm.
Um, so I think more than in any level of play, you have to be willing to just let the players get away with doing these incredible things because they have fun. Like for them, that's extremely fun, to
Yeah.
like skip an entire room because they placed their dimension door just perfectly or something like that. So um my advice in that in a super high level game is to just let those things happen. And as long as the players are expending resources in some way, then the game is still working the way it's supposed to.
Cool. Okay. Having said that, though, you do also have some mid-level and low-level games. Again, one of which you're giving away is sort of level 1 to 3 called Treaty of the Tiger King. But again, it looks quite different because it's diplomacy focused, which again
Yeah.
you just don't see. And for me, like I personally think that yeah, there are some groups who would sit quite well. They like sort of diplomacy or investigation or backstabbing, but again, you don't see them. You just sort of see this quite simple plot with a MacGuffin. So, um, diplomacy based and urban based as well. So in this sort of rather elaborate looking city. What was your favorite aspect of writing? In terms of plot ideas and plot points, but also in this terrain that again is quite different for a low level game.
Yeah, this one was so fun. I loved blending some of my favorite aspects of some adventures and systems I had seen into this. So there's a system actually that makes diplomacy matter in the adventure where the players are kind of trying to accumulate something called respect points.
Mm.
Um, and that was very inspired by a super famous adventure called the Red Hand of Doom, which is players trying to prevent this orc invasion, and they're sort of accumulating victory points throughout the adventure. And I was like, well, if that works for like a combat driven, like milestone driven adventure, I feel like that could also work as a way to represent progress and like gaining political and social clout. So it was really fun to try to imagine like how to create a system where being political actually could matter to the outcome. Um, and I also had the campaign world Eberron in mind when I was writing this
Oh,
because it was
okay.
actually coming out right around the same time. And I really love some of the big cities that are depicted in that setting, like Sharn. It's this sort of like London or New York of the past, you know, of
Mm,
D&D, and it's very vibrant and um there are nightclubs and there are assassins and it's just super pulpy. And so I wanted to
mm.
pull that vibe in as well on top of that whole respect point system.
Awesome. So there's lots of like fluid factions and groups sort of doing their own thing in the background, and the PCs may or may not kind of tug at them a little bit.
Right. Yeah. And they a lot of times I feel like in city settings like that, PCs are getting involved in plots where they only know a fraction of what's actually
Mm,
going on.
yeah.
And that's also something that I wanted to get across in the adventures that there are greater powers that are trying to influence the overall world, and the players can make an impact if they do it in the right place at the right time.
Mm, cool. Okay. And speaking of greater powers, so your third giveaway is going to be your whole bundle of horror. So your four scenarios from levels 1 to 4. Now I absolutely love horror anyway, for scenarios, and I know you put a lot of sort of Edgar Allan Poe little nods and Easter eggs in there. But what was your favorite of those to write out of those four?
Oh, that's a hard one. Yeah, they all came about sort of for different reasons, but I think that my favorite probably is the first one, Mask of the Worms,
Yeah.
having written anyway, my favorite to have written because that was my first like official dip into horror. And um it was for an event for the Edgar Allan Poe Museum that's in Virginia in the US.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, it was they were doing a fundraiser, and there was this really excellent team of players who wanted to do a live stream
Mm.
of a Poe themed adventure as a part of it. And so that's how I got involved in it. And then it turned into this whole I didn't realize there was so much horror inside of me, you know, to write. It turned into four adventures, and two of them were used for fundraising purposes for the Edgar Allan Poe Museum.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think
Thank
as well with Fires of Isk, that was also a fundraising event, I believe.
It was. I wrote it leading into the oh gosh, I'm gonna totally forget it's like such a famous Extra Life, silly me, Extra
Extra
Life.
Life, yeah.
Yeah, because that I had wanted to write something to do in honor of Extra Life, and so that was sort of the deadline that gave me the impetus to write
Mm.
Fires of Isk in the time period that I did.
Yeah, that's
And then
really
yeah.
fantastic. Amazing
Oh,
stuff.
thanks.
Now, you also do a couple of other products as well, which can, I guess, kind of be seen as really nice, quick, easy solutions for GMs and even players as well. So you've got all your little cards for things like combat, spells, items, whatever you want to put. So just for those people watching who don't really know about these combat cards, can you just give us an idea of how they work and how easy it is to implement them into games?
Yeah, so they're printable cards, and they actually I have they're like playing card size when you print them out, and they have a variety of stats that the GM would need to reference, or the DM, I guess. DM is trademarked, so you're not allowed to say that word in your products. Um, but the point of the cards is to sort of be a quick reference for the dungeon master, because and I run into this all the time. I have either like 10,000 books open or 15 tabs with
Mm,
stats.
yeah.
And I was actually starting to like do things like forget monsters in the initiative order, or have to spend a long time looking things up, even though you'd think it would be fast online. I still am very slow about that. So I originally made these little printable cards for myself to use as a reference. And then I thought, well, actually people might like these because, um, as far as monsters and player characters go, you can like see the player character's armor class and passive perception, and then you can
Mm,
use these cards together. Like I just put them together in initiative order when I'm running combat, and then I just flip through them, and I can, you know, much less frequently forget somebody, which is something I do all the time. So,
awesome.
um, yeah, that's the whole point of the cards.
Mm. And I think on there's some scenarios now that include the combat cards as well for the monsters, etc.
Yeah, I put them in there. Every monster that appears in the adventure, I add a printable card for it just because if I'm running the adventure, I want them. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mhm.
So all in one place, so you can just download the one PDF and it's all there.
Thank you. Yeah, that's I try to make a complete package. You know, you can never be perfect, but I try to get there as close as possible.
Yeah, yeah, of
So,
course. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So one last question from me, Kelsey. So if you, if there was a book in the Arcane Library starring you, and the PCs would come along and they would be part of your story, what would this book be called?
oh, that's such a good question. So, if there was a book that I think it would be called something along the lines of figuring it out late, but not too late. I feel like that's the story of my life. You know, I've definitely gone down a lot of different adventures and career paths and journeys in my own life, and so I feel like every one of those has informed the next decision I made. And
Mhm.
I'm always happy with every decision I've made, but when I look back like 7 decisions prior, I'm like, oh, that one was, I'm glad I'm where I am now as opposed to there. So, yep, I guess something along those lines.
Awesome.
What was the title I even came up with? Here, Not There by Kelsey Dion.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey, for taking the time to speak to me today about your products. And
Yeah.
again, thanks once again for coming on to Con+3 this year. We really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for all the work that you're doing. This is such a fantastic cause. So I am just so grateful to be able to be a small part of it. Hey guys, this is Kelsey Dion from the Arcane Library, and I just wanted to ask you to please support the Butterfly Project. It's an extremely important cause, and I will be so grateful to know that you've been a part of helping it. Thank you so much.